Manx Radio's Update with Beth Espy.
Well, first, good evening. Welcome to Update, your half-hour rundown of what's been happening on the Isle of Man today. Coming up before 5:30, why proposed changes to assisted dying legislation in the UK will not affect the bill here. The DOI Minister answers questions about access to some green lanes during TT. Teenagers tell us there's really nothing for them to do over here. And a world champion sidecar racer who used to live here opens up about the financial pressures of the sport. All that, we'll keep an eye on the traffic, travel and the weather and sport as well. And as ever, if you'd like to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. You can text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. We'll start with a roundup of the news headlines with Amy Fastamai.
The Treasury Ministers agreed to adjust next week's Tynwald order paper to include a separate motion about proposed changes to the pensions triple lock system. It's after a number of MHKs raised concerns about the plans to replace it with the Manx pension guarantee. After a motion questioning whether it was right for it to be part of the budgetary process in the House of Keys today, Alex Allinson agreed to bring it to Tynwald separately.
Treasury will adjust the Tynwald order paper to facilitate a full debate on the policy of the Manx pension guarantee and on a separate motion and a separate debate as requested.
Teenagers on the Isle of Man say there's not enough for young people to do here, but not enough of a market to create something for them. Manx Radio's Man in Line was live at St Ninian's High School earlier, where the students said older people often misunderstand younger ones as being rebellious.
The next thing you know, you're on Facebook from Onken residents saying they were making a massive row in the park, and it's just we were just playing manhunt, to be honest.
The island's inflation rose to 2.5% in January. It's up 0.1% from December, with rent seeing the biggest increase in the past 12 months of 19%. Events have started taking place to coincide with a newly installed piece of art at Peel Cathedral. The Museum of the Moon will be on display until the 2nd of March and has already been seen by more than 3.5 million people around the world. To an international news now, and the Church of England stopped short of implementing a fully independent safeguarding model after recent failures in its handling of abuse allegations. There will, however, be increased oversight of safeguarding. The Met Police Commissioner says he plans to appeal a High Court judgment preventing him from sacking officers by removing their vetting clearance. Sir Mark Rowley's called the ruling absurd. The case was brought by a sergeant who'd been accused of sexual assault, allegations he denies. And Cardiff Rugby Union head coach Matt Sherratt will take charge of Wales for the rest of the Six Nations. It's after Warren Gatland stepped down from the role after 14 consecutive defeats. Those are your headlines. I'll be back with the news in full at 6.
Thank you very much indeed, Amy. Now the weather brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Pretty short and sweet, actually. This evening and tonight, mostly dry, bit cloudy, a fresh to east-northeast wind. That'll turn to the east or southeast overnight with minimum temperatures around 2. Tomorrow, generally dry, but again cloudy, a moderate to fresh east to southeast wind. Temperatures only those 6 Celsius again tomorrow. And it'll stay dry and settled on Thursday, but again, cloudy and a southeasterly wind which will strengthen later in the day. Maximum temperatures on Thursday only around 5 or 6. It's still pretty cold. Sunset this evening 5:19. Sunrise tomorrow morning 7:45.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Simply income protection from Kestrel Insurance. A choice of benefits. Simple underwriting and peace of mind with a regular income for up to 2 years if you're unable to work due to illness or injury. Kestrel Insurance is registered with the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Carpetland, the carpet specialist with the island's best value carpets in stock, often fitted within a week. Furnitureland, for 3-piece suites, dining and living room furniture, and a selection of amazing beds. Carpetland and Furnitureland, West Street, Ramsey.
Making life easier with Manx Mobility at the top of Summer Hill. Are you looking for a stair lift? Look no further with Which Magazine's #1 recommended stair lifts. Now provided by Manx Mobility. Access BDD stair lifts. Call us today on 200 680. The exclusive Karcher store is open with thousands of products, accessories and parts in stock. For Karcher sales and service, Hersham Electrical, Shipyard Industrial Estate, Ramsey.
You're listening to Update here on Manx Radio. It's just gone 5:05. Lovely to have your company this evening. Obviously, a lot going on in the House of Keys today. Questions are still ongoing at the moment. And on tomorrow morning's breakfast programme, we'll be talking a little bit more about that pension issue that Amy just mentioned in the news headlines. The Treasury Minister has agreed to bring proposed triple lock changes as a separate Tynwald motion next week. It had previously been planned to be part of the budgetary process. John Moss will be exploring that in detail for you on breakfast tomorrow. But we're going to stay with the Treasury Minister, but in his capacity as the Ramsey MHK, because he says efforts to allow assisted dying over here on the Isle of Man will not be affected by changes to the UK's bill. Now, Kim Leadbetter MP has dropped proposals for the High Court to assess every case, instead proposing that is done by a panel of experts, including judges, social workers and psychiatrists. Now, despite being met with opposition, Mrs Leadbetter believes it would add an extra layer of safeguarding.
What came through in the evidence was the need for a multidisciplinary approach, and that's something I'm giving serious consideration to. I think legal oversight is really important, but I think that multidisciplinary approach could actually enhance the bill even further. I'm not proposing that we take out the role for the judge at all. There will be a role for a judge in the things that I'm looking at. So we'd keep that in. So we'd end up with what you might call a judge plus model, where we could add extra additional expertise into that process. And those are the conversations I'm having at the moment. So we could end up in a situation where we have maybe 6 professional people involved in the process. Now, again, some people would say, you're just making this too difficult. But I would push back on that and say it is such a big change that we need to make this as robust as possible.
Now, that is the MP who's taking those laws through in the United Kingdom. Over here, the Assisted Dying Bill has had a number of amendments by the Legislative Council, which now need to be considered by the House of Keys. And if they're all agreed, it will be signed and submitted for royal assent. Well, the Ramsey MHK, Dr Alex Allenson, says our bill remains completely separate to the one going through the House of Commons.
It doesn't. I mean, what we've been doing on the Isle of Man is to develop legislation that would suit our community and our people. Obviously, there are similar bits of legislation going through Westminster, but also the Scottish Parliament and later on this year the Jersey Parliament. We spent a huge amount of time in the House of Keys debating the various clauses, the safeguards, and those have also been reinforced by the work of the Legislative Council, which will be coming back to the Keys now, with extra safeguards in there. But we look with interest in terms of what's happening in the United Kingdom, obviously.
So we still look at 2 doctors, a witness, etc. That's the process the Isle of Man is following.
It is indeed. There were some changes brought in through the Legislative Council and some amendments there which will be discussed by the House of Keys in the near future.
That is the Ramsey MHK, Dr Alex Allenson. 5:08. A Crime Stoppers Isle of Man has joined forces with victim support and the police on a new campaign highlighting the signs of domestic abuse. Now, the charity is hoping to reach people who have concerns about someone close to them who may be a victim. Karen Ramsey is the chair of the Isle of Man branch. She says anyone can be a victim of abuse, and what the charity really wants to do is encourage those who feel they can't call the police to turn to them for support.
In general, what we're talking about is that anybody can be a victim of domestic abuse, and what Crime Stoppers are trying to encourage are people to report anonymously if they don't feel that they can go to the police or any other agency, and that's certainly an option that we want to let people know about, whether people are colleagues, whether they're family members or friends. If they're seeing something that concerns them and they feel that they want to get help for that individual, if the individual themselves wants to get help, then there is a telephone number that they can ring, which is 0800 555 111, or there is a website they can go to, Crime Stoppers, and they can fill an anonymous online form in, which is they can find that at crimestoppers-uk.org. It's completely anonymous. They will never be traced, but it gives them an opportunity to raise that issue, and that will be fed back to the constabulary here in the Isle of Man. So it doesn't come to the Isle of Man constabulary directly. There's always that anonymity 100% of the time.
Why is it important then that there is that option? Do you sort of see people wanting to come forward with concerns but maybe are concerned about going to that first step, going straight to the police?
There are so many reasons why people don't feel that they can go to the police, or indeed sometimes an agency in a small island like the Isle of Man. So that's just another way that people feel that they can have their voice heard and feel that they're trying to do something. It's a phrase that we sometimes use about being an active bystander. Don't feel that you're powerless, feel that there is something that you can do.
That is Crime Stoppers Chair Karen Ramsey, who's talking to Siobhan. You can hear much more in the latest newscast edition at manxradio.com, because Siobhan caught up with the Detective Sergeant Emily Perkins, Police Constable Becky Creer, and also Victim Support Chief Executive Lorna Trevethan as well. It's gone 5:10. Now, teenagers on the Isle of Man say there's not enough for young people to do here, but also not enough of a market to create something for them. Max Radio's Man in Line was live from St Ninians today at lunchtime, and the students told Andy that often older people misunderstand younger ones as being rebellious when they see them in the street. And they told him that often even a simple game in the park can lead to social media posts about rowdy teenagers.
They think we're all rebellious, that's stereotype around it, but I think there's definitely a lot of us that are still respectful to old people. Like, we always see them out in the street, we'll always offer a hand or help them cross the road or anything. I'm sure a lot of people are still willing to do that. I mean, I know I am, and I'm sure these guys here are as well. We're not all bad.
For young people, they get like a bad reputation, but I also feel like that's due to lack of entertainment on the island. So like, young people would go out, and like an older person will see them, they're just trying to enjoy themselves. They'll go around and play like Manhunt or something. They may be like loud, cause a disturbance, but with older people, they'll view that. But I feel like they don't really understand, like, they're not like bad people, they're just trying to find some entertainment, something to do.
When they were younger, they maybe went out with their friends, they did social things. But for us, obviously, time goes on, things are invented, there's technology, people change, society changes. So obviously, it's just a bit upsetting, when we're going out to a youth club but we're getting older, so we can't go, so we go play Manhunt in the park, and the next thing you know, you're on like Facebook, Onken residents saying they were making a massive row in the park, and it's just like, we were just playing Manhunt, to be honest. That's happened quite a few times, and it's like, sometimes when you're out late, it's like you're not really out late to cause havoc, you're just out there because everybody can be all together. And it's like when you go to the park, it's like you see these signs up there, it's like no one over the age of 14. It's like, well, where are we meant to go?
There's not enough stuff to do on the island for younger people, but there's not enough of a market as well. Like, younger people, if there's anything new that comes to them, there's not the market for a place where young people can have fun, because a lot of people wouldn't pay for it. So then you have the problem with people going out on the streets, and it's a complicated one. It does look bad on paper, a bunch of big groups of kids walking around the streets, but at the end of the day, there is nothing else there for them, unless one of the unlucky parents decides to let them in the house for a couple of hours. Most kids have nowhere to go, so I feel like while it does look bad, there should be something put in place, really, some sort of solution.
Yeah, it's like my parents tell me all about what Summerland and how great it was and everything, and how there was so much to do, and it's like, yeah, they built the NSE, but it costs about £3, £4, £5 for just 1 hour in a swimming pool, and then you have to get a bus back to Douglas, or you have to get a lift. So like, there's not enough things to do, and it's very limited. There's just not really much availability.
That is the view of some of the students at St Ninians High School who were on Man in Line at lunchtime. Well worth listening back to that programme. They're really insightful, and I'm always surprised but just how eloquent the students in our schools are, and it's really heartening, actually. And then they come out with things like this, and we have to think, actually, what else do we need to do for the young people on our island, especially when they're talking about Summerland? Is there enough to do for kids, particularly if they're not sporty? I think if they're sporty, there's quite a few things, aren't there? But really interesting. If you want to go back and listen to that programme, you can go to manxradio.com, and it is available as a podcast. 13 minutes past 5. Now, here's something that came up over the weekend and caused a little bit of a stir online, even leading to a petition. The Department of Infrastructure has applied to close a small number of green lanes during TT this year to combat damage being caused by off-road bikers. Now, the lanes selected are on the uplands, generally dead ends that lead to areas of open hillside in the vicinity of the TT course. Infrastructure Minister Dr Michelle Haywood joined us on breakfast this morning to explain why this is being put in place.
So there's a very limited number of green lanes that are closing: Park Llewellyn, Peg Willis Road, Govlock Road and Snaefell Mines Road and Glen Alden. And they are tracks that by and large lead to the uplands. They lead to a dead end effectively, and what we saw last year was an increasing number of visitors who were driving to the end of those tracks, and then once they got to the end of the tracks they were freestyling it across the hills and across the peatland. And so we did find some riders last year, but you can only find the ones that you can catch. And it would be daft of us to position policemen and DEFA rangers up the top of those uplands in order to try and watch over them for the whole time.
And there has been a bit of backlash when rumours of what was happening during TT came out over the weekend. What have we seen, and what's been the reaction so far?
Well, I was engaged with various people on social media last night. I know that there is a petition underway, and I think people have completely misunderstood the headline that comes out that says greenways closed during TT. It is just not true. Selected greenways are closed for very good reasons, and that was done in conjunction with both DEFA and the Countryside Access Group, who requested that although we could catch people and we could find them, the damage has been done environmentally, and so they would rather we just didn't have the damage. The rest of the greenways tracks, which includes things like the Glenroy track that goes up to access the TT course, they will be open, and so people who usually use those tracks for access to the course can still do so.
This isn't just during TT, though. In November, there was an appeal put out urging them to stick to legal routes and respect boundaries after reports of criminal damage. This in November, so way outside of TT time. Is this a problem year-round?
It's easier when we've got when there aren't lots and lots of visitors here. It's easier for us to do an education piece and say to people, please stick to the tracks. You're right. In November we said it because we know it lands, and we know it's a local that's kind of come off the road, if you like, literally. But actually, when it comes to having lots of visitors here, and we've got tens of thousands of visitors, and we know that people bring over their trail bikes in the back of a van as they come over as well, intending to ride some of those greenways, it's just so much harder for us to police it. And as I say, once the damage is done, it will take years for some of that damage to be recovered.
That's the DOI Minister, Dr Michelle Hayward, who is speaking on Breakfast this morning. Again, the full interview you can find at manxradio.com. And as Ben said after that interview, it's an open line on Man and Line tomorrow, so we expect there might be some comments on there.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, nothing reported on the police pages as far as we can see, so hopefully all okay on your way home tonight. It's probably just the usual roadworks which are out and about around the island, which might just keep you delayed a little bit. Until the 8th of March in Santon, there are temporary lights on the Newcastle Town Road at Newtown. That's between Ballavarton and Mount Murray. They're 24 hours a day for resurfacing, so potentially a little bit of a backlog there. All okay down at the airport and at the steam packet as well. The latest from the steam packet, the Manxman due in any time really into Douglas and heading out again to Heysham at 7:15.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with
Quayside. 18 minutes past 5. Now, getting the right financial backing continues to be a major challenge facing sidecar teams every season, even if you're 2024 world champion Harry Payne. The former Ireland resident has told us that going into this season, even they are among those struggling to get the support they need.
You really need good support, good sponsors, good backing, otherwise you can't do it. We've had to sort of take our time and be smart with what we do because we don't have big sponsorships, we don't have big backing, so it's difficult, and you've got to limit yourself to what you can do, where you can go, how much money you can spend.
Do you think you'd ever want to sit down and think about how much money you have put into this?
Not really. Myself, I only think about race generally. I'm not thinking about other things. So all of my thought process goes into it, all of my money goes into it. I am trying to save for a house, but it's not really working because I keep racing. That support is really vital, but we're really struggling with it at the moment, let's say.
When you think about, obviously, winning the 2024 Sidecar World Championship, I mean, that is surreal. You are literally at the pinnacle of your sport. And if somebody like you is struggling with the sponsorship side of things, I think it just shows people how tough it is out there.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I think in general, this year, I think it's not just with our sport. I think it's with a lot of sports. I mean, in general, everyone's a little bit watching the pennies. And with the sport that I'm in, in the World Championship, it's not as well promoted as the TT. So, it is the pinnacle of sidecar racing on the circuits, but it is struggling for a bit of a boost of promotion, you know? If you're racing at the TT, you've got so much coverage. you've got half a chance of getting some good backing. And that's where we're struggling. I think we're the sort of most followed team on social media in sidecars, and we're struggling like we are. I mean, it's crazy, but it is the way it is. Unfortunately, we can't change it. A lot of emails gone out over the winter, and still till now, every day, there's messages going out, searching. But what can you do? That's the maximum I can do. Yeah, we'll see.
That is the FIM World Champion sidecar racer Harry Payne. Much more again to that chat. I keep talking about these podcasts. Do go to our website if you're able to and have a look at some of the podcasts that are available. Journey to a Dream is one that speaks to predominantly racers who have come here to the Isle of Man or maybe live here on the Isle of Man, but also anybody else who's involved in the racing world. And there are just so many who are just passionate about this sport. But it's really interesting, isn't it? Just thinking about how successful Harry Payne has been and the struggles that they are finding financially. And I think a lot of them find it very difficult to go out and ask for sponsorship, ask for that financial support for a sport that they are really in love with, but they don't necessarily expect other people to pay for it. So you can listen to that full interview with Harry on Journey to a Dream, available right now at manxradio.com. You can find a link to it on the Manx Radio Motorsport page. 21 minutes past 5, and businesses on the Isle of Man are being encouraged to consider taking on an apprentice. It's actually National Apprenticeship Week. University College Isle of Man is marking the occasion by hosting an event on Thursday, which will see industry experts share their experiences of the benefits of apprenticeship schemes. Ollie Newton will be on the panel. He's the Chief Executive of the Edge Foundation and a former Specialist Advisor to the House of Lords Committee on Youth Unemployment.
There's a real growing trend, both in the Isle of Man, in islands that we work with, and around the world, to really see kind of the value of apprenticeships and the idea that people young and older, maybe career changers too, can be kind of learning and earning at the same time and kind of really getting that experience on the job.
Yeah, it's all good news, really, isn't it? For many years, though, apprenticeships have played second fiddle to academia, really, and getting places at university seemed to be the big thing. But that's all changing, isn't it, when people see the benefits of apprenticeships?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very much like a many routes to success. So for some people, one route is going to be better than others. But absolutely, we want to see that kind of parity of esteem and really see kind of vocational options like apprenticeships as the equal of university. And absolutely, there's kind of a really clear financial case. So be able to start kind of earning while you learn, getting the kind of experience on the job. And also employers are telling us, again, not just in the Isle of Man, but around the world, how important that kind of on-the-job experience is. And particularly those broader skills like team working, problem solving, that you really only get from kind of spending time working.
And if we look at it in totally practical terms, the UK has a real skills gap in many areas. So I guess recruiting apprentices is the only real way of providing a long-term solution.
You're absolutely right. So, yeah, we've done a lot of research ourselves in this space, and the UK is not alone in this. But absolutely, there's a big skills gap, and particularly in certain industries, and particularly kind of post-COVID, post-Brexit. So it is a real challenge that needs to be met. Apprenticeships are definitely part of the answer, but there are kind of also other parts to this challenge as well. So things like, reskilling, taking account of the kind of new green industries, increasing people's skills in kind of tech. But yeah, for sure, apprenticeships are a key part of that. And I think they produce that really kind of close relationship between the apprentice and the employer.
That is Ollie Newton, who's the Executive Director of the Edge Foundation and a former Specialist Advisor to the House of Lords Committee on Youth Unemployment, just talking about the benefits of apprenticeships. And we shared something on our social media pages earlier about the Isle of Man Steam Packet, who have sent 2 apprentices to the UK for training at the Fleetwood Nautical Campus, Jake and Ruben, on the first part of their training there, learning the skills and duties of a deck rating. So lots of businesses on the Isle of Man really supporting apprenticeships. Hi, Rob. I need an apprenticeship. Carry on, sport.
All right, well, we just heard from Harry Payne in the motorsport side of things before, but from 3-wheeled racing to 2-wheeled racing, TT star Peter Hickman is thanking FHO Racing for his time with them after officially parting ways with the team this week. Yesterday it was confirmed, if you didn't hear the news, that he and Davey Todd have split from the crew and will instead form the new BMW-supported 810 racing team, which will launch later this month. Well, in an update to fans, Hickman says FHO will always be a huge part of his career and is forever grateful for the opportunity. He adds more news on he and Todd's new setup is coming soon, and that's to say he's excited is an understatement. It comes after BMW Motorrad UK yesterday announced the team changes and formation of 810 Racing in what it calls a restructure of its motorsport lineup. Elsewhere in motorsport, rising Ireland racing talent Grant Thompson looks to have moved a step closer to making his Manx Grand Prix debut this year. The Port St Mary rider has been named in the 2025 racing lineup for Ireland-based privateer side The People's Bike. Along with MGP, the crew says Thompson is due to contest the Southern 100, the meeting in which he made his road racing debut in 2024. Well, he's one of several Ireland riders currently in contention to make their maiden appearance on the Snaefell Mountain course this season, along with Luke Blevins, Wayne Avis, Blake Kelly and Sam Norton. Well, competing on the roads for the first time last year, Thompson made an immediate impression at the Southern 100 road races on the Blount course to win the solo founders race. Elsewhere, Luke Blevins finished the campaign a double Andros Racing Association champion, finishing top of the pile in both the singles, twins and triples championship and super twins championship. All entries into this year's Manx Grand Prix for Thompson, Blevins, Avis, Kelly and Norton will all be subject to final checks and approvals.
Well, there we go. It's all exciting stuff, isn't it? And I just keep thinking that it's not going to be very long before we see the motorsports world opening up again here in the Isle of Man. It always seems such a long way off, doesn't it? It's a long winter.
It does, and I'm thinking as well for the teams and the riders it could be quite fascinating as well with the developments we've seen going on in Southern Ireland as well, with the hopes and real optimism now that meetings can go ahead. Which routes will people go down to get themselves ready for the likes of the TT and whatnot and MGP and so on? So interesting to see.
I've learned how to say apprenticeship now. Apprenticeship. Can you say it?
Apprenticeship.
Apprenticeship. It is difficult, isn't it? Thank you very much indeed, Rob. As ever, if you want to keep up to date with the latest sports news, Manx Radio has got its own sports Facebook page. That's where all the details about our stories are. And if there are any big games, all the results are posted on there as well. So do check that out. There's also the Sportscast, which is the longer interviews of any people that Rob talked to. So well worth checking that out. That is pretty much all from Update this evening, though. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Breakfast will be back with you from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. But do stay with Manx Radio tonight. Lots more to come. There's an Island Life special about the local authority elections coming up next with our local democracy reporter Emma Draper. That election taking place over here on April the 24th. We don't know how many counts are going to be yet. That information will be coming in the coming weeks. But Emma's been talking to lots of people just about what's involved in being a commissioner, and maybe it's something you might think about doing. Then Greatest Hits is in the hands of Michelle Kane tonight. She's standing in for Chris all this week. The Folk Show with John Barker is on at 9 and Dave Moore is here with After Hours from 10. Whatever you're doing, have a great evening. We'll talk to you tomorrow.